Hey guys, so in this video I'm going to explain how to use Zapier and Pipedrive in order to create or update a person contact and most specifically update their email addresses. So it's quite easy to use Zapier to update just one email address, but what if you want to add another email address, a secondary one? Then it gets a little bit more complicated. You would have to use our API a little bit. But in this video, I'm just going to address that part, how to add the second one. So essentially, I'm just going to use a trigger off of a spreadsheet I have here. So this is just for the sake of the example. So I have one column for email addresses and the second column for the second email addresses, and then the person name. So yeah, I'll just go through that just to explain how I did that, but that's not the most important part of this video. So I chose Excel and then chose the updated row trigger they have, and then chose my account, and then I went through the edit options part, chose where exactly that spreadsheet is, and well, then I got my row. So they ask you to kind of like test it out to see if you can get the rows. So yeah, in this part you can see that it gets the first row where you see the name Daniel Zapier, column C, and then Daniel at zapier2.com, column B, and then column A. So you can see that here in this row. All right, so then we go off to find or create a person in Pipedrive. That's this one here, find person, under the search section. So find person or create. So I chose my account, my Pipedrive account. That's the next part. Then I find my person by name. Again, that's not the most important part of this video, but just explaining for the sake of clarification. Find via the name. So the value that it's going to search for is column C, which is this one, Daniel Zapier. So you can click on this thing, which allows you to see all the information gathered by the previous step, which would be the Excel row. So then you can choose Daniel Zapier, column C, which I've already done. And then if this person doesn't exist in Pipedrive, then it's gonna create. Well, you can choose if it's gonna create or not. You can click on this checkbox here. So yeah, that's gonna create that person based off that name. So then you can just continue if you don't want to add anything else. And then again, this is the part where you see the limitation in terms of the email. So you see that here. It kind of prompts you to add an email address, but if you separate it, if you add a comma and then the other email address, it's going to add both email addresses within one email address, which is not the best way to do it. Of course, you want to have those two email addresses separated. So there is where you'll find that limitation, right? So this is why we're trying to use the API to kind of correct this little gap that Zapier has here. So then you go on and continue. It finds your person. And then the tricky part, here's where we get to the specifics of what this video is concerned. So you go to Zapier webhooks. So you just search here for webhooks and choose the custom request, which allows you to provide raw details, and this is exactly what we're going to do in this case. So we're going to be using Json. I'm not really an API expert by no means, but I'm going to try my best to explain this as accurately as possible. So basically this is going to use an API endpoint, and that you can actually get from this page. So this is our developers pipedrive.com API documentation. So essentially you'll want to get the updated person endpoint and just test it out. Test it out with any random ID, or even the get the person but this is the one that we're going to be using anyway. So just test it out so you can see exactly the part within the body where it refers to email. So you'll see here how it's actually kind of spelt. So it starts from here all the way until this part. So this is how the email is kind of coded. So you can see that email is this, label, home, value, first email, and then within this, I think this is called like Boolean, I don't know how they call it, variable, let's say. It's either true or false. So primary, meaning that's the primary email, true, that's going to be the primary. And then the second email, primary is false, meaning it's going to be a secondary email address. So you want to copy this onto the part here in the body. You want to copy exactly how it is and just put it there. So it's very, very important to copy it exactly from where it starts, email with the quotes, until the part where it ends, this bracket here before that comma. So yeah, that's very important to put in the Zap. So then what you want to do is replace whatever you have. If you don't have anything, you'll just have to type this in and replace what you have, the email addresses you have. If you don't have any email addresses, you just want to put in between the quotes. I'm just going to show you here. So let's say that this is how it is, right? You want to put in your quotes a variable from the spreadsheet. So what we want to put is the first email here, and then in the other one, the second variable, and that's from the spreadsheet, right? So then it's going to take, every time there's a row updated, it's going to take the first email address from here and the second email address from here. So as you can see, false for the second email address will make it a secondary email address, and true for the first email address will make it a primary email address. So the rest here, you just want to copy from the API response. So going back to the API documentation, if you go here to request and response, this is the one that you tested. If you tested it, hopefully you did. You can check here, request and response. So in response, you want to put this content type and application JSON in this part, in the headers. And most importantly, a part that I just jumped, very sorry about that, is this part. Well, firstly, of course, you put here, because it's a put request. You want to update data, and that's what the put request does. So very important, you have to put the URL, which is required. So you want to steal from the request, sorry. You want to steal this part from the API developers documentation and put it here. And also very important, probably you've already done this before, but in order to test within the API documentation page, you have to add your API token. As soon as you try to use an endpoint, it's going to prompt you to add your API token, which is this part. And that you can find from your Pipedrive account. I'll just show you really quickly. Probably you already know this, but regardless, let's just test that out. You go to Pipedrive settings, personal, and then API, and this is your API token. The API documentation is going to ask you for that. So yeah, I'm going to close this now. So once you've added your URL here, you want to do something like a little trick. And just to explain that, this part that I did here, this API request is very specific to this one ID, this one person I put here. So what we want to do with Zapier is that it actually does it every time for a new person that's generated by this person that we created here. So the trick here is that when you copied it, there was a number here from some person that you tested. So what you want to do is erase these numbers before the interrogation mark here, and call the ID, which is gathered by the second step of find or create a person. So it's basically this. So that's going to be a variable. So you want to put that there. So that's pretty much it. That's how you set it up. And this means that every time you add a row here with new information, new emails, that's gonna be carried forward to Pipedrive. So continue, successful, finish. So yeah, I've already tested it out, and I didn't have this person, Daniel Zapier, so it went forward and created Daniel Zapier for me with these two email addresses. So that's the way to do it. I hope that helps. Best of luck.